Now that we reached to this point, on the next we're gonna try to create this light and this type of cuts. So I click on my object, go to the object mode and edit mode, and from the bottom what we're gonna do is to create this light, and for this light I first need 6 edges. Okay, so I can use the loop cut tools. This is the loop cut. I select an edge and then move it here, or I can use the shortcut because its shortcut is faster. Ctrl R and left click and drag. Another one here, another one here, another one here, and another one here. And as you can see, the distance between the lights and the size of these horizontal lights are the same, but because I just put the edge by visual estimation and not actually measuring the distance of these edge, the distance are not gonna be the same. For example, in reality, this one and this one and this one need to be the same, but it actually isn't. So when you want to create, for example, 3 pair of edges that need to have the same distance, a better approach is to, let me Ctrl Z. First I add an edge at the center of all the edges that I need. For example, right here I need 3 pair of edges, so I first add a loop cut, for example, here, and approximately is, for example, here. Then I go to my bevel tools and I need 3 pairs, so first I create 3 edges so that the distance between these 3 edges are the same. And let me add another with adding the segment, and once again I'm gonna click on this 3 loop edge and bevel another time. But if I bevel right now, you can see that it's gonna be bevel this part and it's not really what I want. So I'm gonna Ctrl Z and Alt and left click or double click on this one, depend on the emulate 3 button mouse activation or not, and shift add this one and then add this one. And after I select these 3, I once again use the bevel tools, create a, I think this much is enough. And if you add your edge in this way, the distance between these 3 pair edge and also the height of each one of these pair are gonna be the same. And this is how a professional modeler model a simple object like this. Okay, so I add the faces that I want. Now I need to extrude it, but as I've said before, whenever the material in your objects change, it's better for you to separate your object from another. So it's a light material and it's a wooden material, so it's better to separate these two. What I'm gonna do this time, as the same as before, I'm gonna use mesh duplicate, and I duplicate my object, and you can see that right now I have 2 faces at the bottom of each other. So if you want to separate the faces that I selected to a different object, so you have a cube here, but this time you don't want to be at the same object as cube, you want to be at the different object. You can go to the mesh and then press separate, and if I press separate by selection, because I selected my faces here, I press separate by selection. Just look at the outliner on here, mesh separate selection. It's gonna create a new object based on these faces. And if I back to the object mode and select on this face and back to the edit mode, right now I only work on this faces and I can't work on this cube. It doesn't matter where I click, I can't work on this. And in complicated object that you have a lot of different parts, separating your object is gonna be really useful. So I back to the object mode, and let me tell you another thing that you need to do. Let me change the name. If I double click on the name, I can change it to, for example, light. And actually 3 lights. And then I click on my object and go to the edit mode. And let me hide it for now. I hide the 3 light. You can see that we have 6 edge loop here that is really redundant. So I'm gonna click on the whole and then shift click on the button and shift click, so that all of them selected. And then you can either press Ctrl X to dissolve it, press X and then dissolve edges, or click right, and if you are in edge mode you can select dissolve edges. Don't delete edge. If you delete edge, you can see that the face with the edge is gonna be deleted. So always, if you only want to delete edges, select dissolve edges. It's really confusing, but that's what it is. So I delete my extra edge, then I can back to the object mode. Let me back my 3D lights and then go to the edit mode, and now I'm gonna work on this. So first, before, if we look at the light, first it's this kind of shape, then it's going to be this kind of shape. Okay, so we created this face. Now we need to give it a little volume. So as I've said before, if you want to press all of your object, you can come to select and then select all, and you can see that all of my object in this part is gonna be selected. But if you want to select, for example, this part but not these 2 parts, there is a shortcut that if I hover my mouse on and select L, you only select this part that is separated from the bottom 2 part. L, L. And now that I select 3 of them, I can use the extrude to extrude my object. But as you can see, if I use extrude in this shape, it's gonna work not in the way that I want. So I'm gonna put it back on where it was, go to the extrude and make sure that all of this is 0, and use the scale. We have a scale here, so I use a scale and then use the white ring to extrude it. And what I did is create the face, but don't move the face. I put it at the place of the same face and then use the scale to make the size bigger. But as you can see, it's gonna scale along the Z axis, and while I hold my left click, I don't want to scale in the Z axis, so I press Shift Z. And you can see that right now it's gonna only scale on X and Y axis. So the size of the light isn't really that big, so I think that's much is enough. And then, like the glass, I'm gonna add edge at the center of each one of these edge. Then select box, shift select all of these 3, and you once again use a scale it, and this time again I don't want to scale it in the Z axis, so I press Shift Z, and like this, without deselecting any edge, I use the bevel to make it a little smoother and shape it. Okay, so this is how modeling works. If you know what you want to do and how you need to do it, you don't make any mistake. And the way that you can reach the state that you know what you want to do is by modeling a lot of objects. And a lot, I mean 100, 200, 300. And after that, you finally know yourself that it doesn't matter what kind of object is in front of you, I already can create it. So practice, practice, and practice. This is our light, and I think for now this much is enough. And in the next video, I'm gonna create this diagonal cut. In the last video, I said it's better to separate your object based on material. But as we see, even after separation, all of my meshes were in one object. So I want to emphasize that you can separate your meshes in one object, or you can even separate them to become two different objects. So even separate them by mesh or separate them by object. But in Blender, separate object is gonna separate your object into a different object. So I want to clear on that. And you can always subscribe or like if you want. See you on the next video.